The turkey hit the floor with a sickening thud, sending a splash of gravy across Gregory's polished Italian loafers. Camille shrieked. Leo looked up from his phone for the first time in an hour, eyebrows raised like he thought this was some kind of bizarre family game. But I wasn't playing anymore. I had spent the past 14 hours in that kitchen, kneading, roasting, sautéing, trying to create something worthy of a holiday I no longer believed in. The garland twinkled over the windows, the scent of cinnamon hung in the air. But inside me, hollow, cold, done. I took a deep breath, looked at the stunned faces before me, and said calmly, "I'm officially retiring as your cook, maid, and invisible house ghost. This Christmas dinner is the last I'll ever make in this house. I'm done. Let me back up a bit. 3 days ago, I was scraping burnt sugar off a creme brulee dish with swollen hands and a knot in my back that hadn't eased up in weeks. Camille had decided, last minute of course, that chocolate mousse was too heavy and creme brulee was more elegant. Never mind the fact that I hate creme brulee, or that she contributed absolutely nothing to this dinner except a bottle of mediocre wine and her usual backhanded compliments. "Liv, you really do miracles in that tiny apron," she smirked that morning, inspecting my tired face with a flick of her French manicured nails. I smiled. Tight. Numb. I've learned over the years how to keep my mouth shut so well. I could teach. A masterclass. Gregory walked into the kitchen later, glass of Pinot in hand, glanced at the golden brown turkey in the oven and said, "Fire needs to be higher. Skin's not crispy enough." I wiped my hands on the dish towel. "Maybe you could try making it next year?" He chuckled without humor. "Don't get testy, Olivia. You're making the guests uncomfortable." Guests. They were his friends, his law partners, his clients, his curated little circle of ego and money. And me? I was the staff in a blouse, the wife-shaped appliance. At some point, I stopped correcting him when he introduced me as just my wife. She bakes sometimes. I stopped defending the years I gave up my bakery in Boston, the one people booked months in advance, the one that got a full-page write-up in Boston Living, the one I closed the moment he said, "We're having Leo, and I think it's best you focus on the home." Leo. My son. Our boy. Now 26 and barely able to look me in the eye without swiping his screen. I made him his favorite cookies, hazelnut shortbread, and he left them untouched on the counter, choosing instead to text Camille about what a boomer playlist I had on the stereo. My Christmas gift from Gregory this year was a pressure cooker. I nearly laughed when I unwrapped it. Of course, another tool to make me more efficient, to cook faster, to serve better. But the real slap in the face came that night. I was walking past the study on my way to refill the cranberry sauce when I heard them, Gregory and Camille, talking in hushed voices. My name hung in the air like cigarette smoke. "She's used to be exciting," Gregory was saying. "Now she's just a sunk cost." Camille let out one of those ugly nasal laughs. "You should have cut your losses years ago." I stood there, gripping the serving tray so hard my fingers ached. My heart didn't break. It didn't have the strength left. It just hardened. I went back into the kitchen, calmly. I looked around at the turkey, at the pile of dishes, at the nondescript gift wrapping Gregory had used, and I made a decision. I pulled out the folder I'd hidden behind the cereal boxes in the pantry. Inside, a lease for a small apartment in New Hampshire, already signed and paid for with the money I'd secretly earned selling custom gingerbread boxes to my old customers online. I had $1,200 saved, and a suitcase packed in. The garage under the box labeled Christmas lights. I had been planning this for months, waiting for the moment I'd know, truly know, that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't overreacting, that I was, in fact, being erased piece by piece. So when Gregory told me the turkey wasn't crispy enough and asked me to try harder next year, something inside me clicked. I walked into the dining room, holding that beautiful turkey by both ends. I didn't say a word. I didn't scream or cry. I just let it fall. And for the first time in years, I felt weightless. Before we jump in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. No one moved at first. The turkey lay in a sad, steaming heap at my feet. Gravy puddled around my boots. For one gloriously silent second, no one knew what to say. Gregory's mouth hung slightly, open, the way it did when a judge interrupted him mid-argument. Camille clutched her wine glass like a lifeline, and Leo blinked at me, baffled, like he was seeing a ghost where his mother used to be. Then Gregory recovered. Of course he did. Olivia, he said slowly, voice tight, jaw clenched. What the hell do you think you're doing? I looked him dead in the eye. Leaving, I said. A choked sound came from Camille. You're what? I'm done, I repeated. With this, with all of it. Gregory took a step forward, lowering his voice to that cold, controlled tone he used in courtrooms. Don't be ridiculous. You've embarrassed yourself enough. I didn't flinch. No. What's ridiculous is that I've cooked for 16 people today with a swollen knee and a torn rotator cuff, and not one of you noticed. What's ridiculous is that I've been treated like background noise in my own home for years. And now? Now I'm gone. Leo stood abruptly. Mom, come on, don't be dramatic. You're making this a scene. I turned to him. Sweetheart, this is a scene. You've just never paid enough attention to notice. I walked past him and headed for the hallway. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I opened the closet, pulled out my coat, and grabbed the keys I'd hidden in the inside pocket weeks ago. My phone, already wiped and reset, was zipped, inside my purse. In the garage, the suitcase was right where I'd left it, behind a box of old wrapping paper. I wheeled it out calmly, like I was leaving a hotel after checkout. Gregory followed me out onto the front porch. Snow was falling hard now, blanketing the walkway and turning the world into something quiet and clean. You really think you can survive out there? He asked, gesturing toward the driveway. You've had everything handed to you for decades. I almost laughed. Handed to me? You mean cleaning up after you, covering for you, cooking, laundering, nursing you through the flu every January? Without once being thanked? That's what you call being handed something? His voice sharpened. You walk out that door, Olivia. Don't expect to come crawling back when things get hard. I looked at him, really looked at him. For maybe the first time in 10 years, the tailored coat, the smug tilt of his chin, the absolute certainty that no one would ever leave him. I'm not coming back, I said. I already have a lease. I already have work. You just didn't notice. Behind him, the door creaked, open, and Camille peeked out, wrapped in a cashmere throw. Let her go, she said, her voice cold and amused. I give her 2 weeks. 3 if she finds a church group willing to pity her. I smiled. You might want to check your purse before you make bets, Camille. Her eyes narrowed, but I didn't wait for a response. The taxi was waiting at the end of the drive, headlights cutting through the snow. I climbed in without looking back. The driver, a woman with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes, met my gaze in the rearview mirror and gave a little nod. You Olivia? I nodded. Yeah. She smiled. Julie, I used to sit next to you in home ec. Remember? I blinked. You wore the denim jacket with the pins. That's me, she grinned. Heard through the grapevine you might be needing a lift sometime soon. Figured I'd just cruise by and see. I sat back, a laugh bubbling in, my throat half shock and half wonder. The seat was warm, the windows slightly fogged. The world outside was hushed, as though holding its breath. Julie turned up the heater and pulled onto the road. So, she said, glancing at me sideways, you got a place to land, Or are we just driving until the past feels smaller? I smiled, for the first time all day. Apartment in Dover. Tiny, above a bookstore. I've got a key and a coffee maker waiting. Well, she said, that sounds like a damn fine start. And just like that, the house behind me disappeared into the storm. The apartment above the bookstore smelled faintly of old paper and fresh paint. The walls were uneven, the floor creaked when I walked across it, and the radiator groaned like it was arguing with the winter wind outside. But to me, it was perfect. It was mine. The landlord had left the key under the mat, just like she said. I unlocked the door, flicked on the single overhead light, and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. There was no grand welcome, no roaring, fireplace or tray of champagne flutes. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't press in on you, but wraps around you gently, like a wool shawl. I set my suitcase down and opened it with trembling hands. Inside were the few things I'd taken: 2 thick sweaters, my rolling pin, a Ziploc bag filled with gingerbread spices I'd blended myself, and a worn photo of my bakery from the early days. I propped the photo up on the window ledge and smiled. At the crooked lettering on the sign, Olivia's Crumbs. That night, I curled up on the small futon and slept harder than I had in years. No midnight demands for cold water, no alarms set for someone else's schedule. Just the whir of the bookstore's heater below and the occasional rattle of a passing plow outside. The next morning, I walked downstairs and introduced myself to the shop owner, a woman named June with a shaved head, thick glasses, and a deep laugh that made you feel like you'd already earned it. By noon, I was helping her organize a shipment of holiday journals. By the end of the week, I had a part-time job wrapping books and managing the front counter. In the afternoons, I baked in the little kitchenette upstairs. Nothing fancy, just shortbread cookies, gingerbread tiles, cranberry scones. I'd leave, a plate by the bookstore register, and customers started asking, "Did the cookie lady make these?" I didn't correct them. I liked the sound of it. Then, one Thursday, I got a letter. A real one. Paper, stamp, my name handwritten across the front. I opened it slowly, unsure whether it would be kind or cruel. Inside was a card from an old student. Of mine, a girl I'd taught baking basics to in a community class back in Boston. She wrote, "I started my own little baking business last year. You told me once that the perfect cookie wasn't the one that looked best. It was the one someone reached for first. I think about that all the time. Thank you for giving me permission to be imperfect." I held the letter to my chest and sat there for a long time. By the end of the month, June helped me set up an online shop. I called it Crumbs and Grace. Orders came slowly at first, mostly locals. But one day, a food blogger mentioned me in a list of hidden gems, and suddenly I was packaging up dozen after dozen of spiced cookies, cranberry oat bars, and orange-glazed loaves. It wasn't glamorous. My hands cracked from flour in winter. The sink backed up twice, but every day I ended my work knowing I had created something that was mine, something people wanted. One morning, as I was labeling jars, "Of chai spice mix," a familiar voice called out from the bookstore entrance. "Mom?" I froze. Slowly, I walked to the top of the stairs and looked down. There he was. Leo, standing next to a cardboard display of poetry anthologies, holding a tote bag like he didn't know what to do with his hands. I descended the stairs slowly. "I didn't expect you," I said. "I didn't know where else to go," he replied, his voice smaller than I remembered. We sat in the back room, mugs of tea warming our hands. He told me Camille had left town 2 weeks after I did, taking a chunk of Gregory's retirement fund with her. Gregory, according to Leo, had tried to hush it up, but word had gotten around. His law firm was reevaluating his position. Leo looked at me for a long time before he finally said, "I didn't know how much you did. I guess I thought it was just what moms do. until I had to figure out how to wash a shirt and make pasta without a microwave. I didn't smile. I didn't cry either. I just nodded. You always made it look easy, he added. But it wasn't, was it? No, I said. It never was. He pulled something from his bag then. A book. A blank journal with a stitched leather cover. He slid it across the table to me. I thought, maybe, you'd write some of your recipes down, or stories, or whatever. I just thought it should come from you. I traced the edge of the journal with my fingers, then looked up at him. I'm not the same person I was in that house, Leo. I know, he said. That's why I came. And in that quiet, where there was no performance, no duties, no demands, just a mother and son learning how to speak to each other again, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but space. Room for a new shape to form between us. One that didn't ask me to shrink. Spring came slowly to New Hampshire. The snow didn't melt so much as it retreated, inch by inch, like a tired old man leaving a room. The streets turned from white to gray, then finally to a hopeful green. The bookstore put out a basket of used paperbacks by the door, and I planted 2 pots of herbs on the windowsill above my kitchen sink, basil and mint. It was the first time in years I'd planted something for myself. Business picked up. The online orders multiplied, and I found myself waking at dawn just to get the baking done before the bookstore opened. I didn't mind. There was something deeply satisfying about watching dough rise in the oven while the sky turned pale outside my window. June helped me turn the storage closet into a tiny studio space. We hung shelves, added hooks for aprons and ribbons, and pushed in a used work table with flowers still etched into its corners from whoever came before me. That table became my sanctuary. I stitched linen bread bags by hand, embroidered tea towels, and began selling them alongside my baked goods. One woman ordered 6 and sent me a message that read, "There's warmth in your work. I don't know how else to say it." I knew exactly what she meant. One evening, I stood at the front counter of the bookstore, counting receipts, when the front door chimed and Gregory walked in. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. His frame was still broad, his coat still tailored, but something about him had folded in on itself. His face was tight, but there was a nervousness in his shoulders I'd never seen before. "I wasn't sure if you'd be here," he said. "I live upstairs," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I know," he said, glancing around the store. "It's charming." I waited. "I came to talk," he said. "I think we owe each other that." I stepped out from behind the counter and gestured toward a pair of chairs near the poetry section. We sat, the shelves around us lined with sonnets and heartbreak. He sighed. "Camille took nearly everything. The firm asked me to take a step back. Leo barely speaks to me, and I guess I started thinking about what went wrong." I raised an eyebrow. "And what did you come up with?" His lips pressed together. "I think I underestimated you." "You did," I said simply. He looked down at his hands. "I was angry when you left. I felt embarrassed. But now, I don't know. Maybe I was jealous." That caught me off guard. "Of what?" I asked. "Of your ability to walk away, to build something new. I never thought you could. But you did." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I leaned forward. "Gregory, I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even sad. But I am done. There's nothing left between us that hasn't already burned." He nodded slowly. "I figured. I just wanted to say it. To say sorry. Even if it doesn't fix anything." "It doesn't," I said, not cruelly, just truthfully. He stood. "If you ever need anything—" "I don't," I said, standing with him. "But thank you." He gave me a final nod, then walked out the door. The bell chimed behind him, and just like that, he was gone. That night, I stood in my studio under the warm glow of the pendant light and opened a small wooden box I'd kept tucked away since the move. Inside were my wedding rings, wrapped in a piece of old muslin. I held them for a moment, then carried them to the river behind the bookstore. The current was slow, the moon high. I let the rings drop one by one and watched the water carry them. Away, it felt like punctuation, not a period but a semicolon, because I wasn't ending. I was continuing, finally, on my own terms. Weeks later, I hosted a community baking class in the bookstore. The room was full of laughter and flour dust and crooked cookies that still somehow tasted perfect. Leo sat quietly in the back, scribbling notes for an essay he said he wanted to write called "The Mother You Miss When You're Not Looking." After the class, he stayed behind to help clean up. As we folded aprons together, he asked, "Think you could teach me how to make those cranberry oat bars sometime?" I smiled. "I think I could." He reached for one of the linen tea towels and held it up. "You stitch this?" "Every letter," I said. He turned it over in his hands, then looked at me. "You're really something, Mom." I touched his cheek, just for a second. "I always was. You just didn't see it before." And there, in the bookstore that smelled of ink and cinnamon, with the lights glowing warm and the shelves full of stories, I realized I had written one of my own. One that didn't end in sacrifice or silence, but in rediscovery. Not of who I used to be, but of who I had always been underneath the noise, still Olivia. Still whole. Finally free. This story is more than just a tale of a woman leaving her home. It's a quiet revolution. It speaks to the invisible labor so many women carry for decades without thanks. It reminds us that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers enough in the middle of a crowded room and walks out with nothing but a suitcase and her dignity. Olivia's journey is a testament to reclaiming identity, finding purpose beyond roles imposed by others, and daring to build a new life. One handmade, imperfect, and entirely her own. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of someone you know, or maybe even yourself, drop a comment with the number 2 below. And if it didn't quite hit home, that's okay too. Leave a 7 and tell us why. Your thoughts matter. We'd love to hear from you. Before you go, take a second to hit the like button. It really helps others find these stories. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow, we've got something truly special lined up, and I don't want you to miss it.